chat just to make sure that the audio is working fine and that you can hear me and everything's coming through okay. If somebody could just type a message in chat that everything seems to be fine. Hopefully you should hear me. We'll test this quite a bit. Yep, that looks great. And then second of all, if you could just type that you can just see me switching between a desktop and also the PowerPoint preview here that you can see. Yep. Okay, cool. All right, so it's great that you could join us today. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name's Josh. You know me from Comet, and you might also know me from my client as well. I'm working quite a bit in Comet at the moment, and so I'm your main point of contact. If you've got any questions or anything like that, do feel free to come to me. I'm also joined today by Mason, who's one of our lead developers here that's worked on Comet. So he's also going to be talking you through some of the exciting things that we've done here. During this webinar also, we've got the chat open. So if you want to ask questions, we'll look to see if we can address those at the end of the chat if we've got enough time. If we don't, I'll certainly come back to you on email in regards to any questions that you have. So Mason, if you'd like to get started, we're going to have a bit of a discussion now about server roles, because I think a lot of people have seen these and said it's been quite interesting. Want to have a bit more detail about server roles and what makes this so different compared to sort of other backup products.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Josh. So my name's Mason. I'm a software engineer working for Comet, and I'm going to talk to you about server roles. So we've got a lot of experience with the managed service provider backup industry, and we've heard a lot of complaints about, there's just teething problems that people run into with sort of the standard traditional models for backup. And we really had these problems or sort of these restrictions in mind when we were developing Comet. So I'm going to run through a quick scenario that I'm sure will be all too familiar for you guys who have run backup companies in the past. And so when you first get started with your company, you buy a backup server or you're running it off existing hardware and everything's fine. You put some users on it. You've got enough CPU and memory overhead to handle the users, and you've got enough disks to handle all the data. And everything's fine until you start reaching the limits of a single server. And at that point, you have to move a user. Say you've got one user who's really large, you have to move them to a separate server, or one server's got more data than the other, and there's sort of an imbalance. And we talk to a lot of partners who have sort of their first server, and their first server is full, and they've got their second server, and their second server is almost empty. And it's just not a good use of CPU and disk load, and you're getting a suboptimal experience out of it. And it's hard to move users between servers because a lot of the time that would involve a remote connection to the client machine to change some URLs or migrate a profile or something like that. And it's just complicated and hard, and we can do better. And so Comet realized that user management and data storage are totally separate things. And so when you install a Comet server, you can choose what that server is going to do. And it's perfectly fine to stick with the original case. You've got all your users, all your data on a single server. But when you start to grow, you're not constrained in the same way that you are with perhaps other products. So for instance, we can keep all users on a single server. No matter if there's 100, 200, 500, 10,000 users can fit on a single server because the data is elsewhere on a different server. And this means, so you run out of storage, you spin up another storage server. I don't have to go create another actual account server to log into. Or maybe I want to spin up another sub-brand. I can start a whole new account server and point it at my existing storage server infrastructure. So you can scale the roles independently. Just because you're running out of storage doesn't mean that you have to log into a new system to get your users working. And so that's basically server roles. So you've got the auth role server where users log into, and the storage role server where the data is actually stored. And those may be the same server, or those may be separate servers. It's up to you. We give you the flexibility to structure your infrastructure however you like. There's one more role, which is the constellation role. The constellation role, we possibly don't need to go into this too much detail right now because we are going to be a little pushed for time. But basically, the constellation is one more role that you can turn for a single server that gives it the big picture. You know, if you've split your accounts into an auth server and separate storage role servers, then the constellation is the one piece that gets to see how everything lines up in the big picture, especially when you've got things like, some of the data has been replicated, and you know, what if some of the users are pointing at the replica and some aren't, or you know, however. And so that's a brief overview of server roles.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Mason. Like I said, if you've got any further questions, just leave them in the chat and we'll look to address them at the end or come back to you on email. Now, one of the other things that I was hoping that we could cover today was about chunking. I mean, we talk a lot about chunking, and it's something that we're pretty proud about. So Mason's now going to have a little bit of a discussion about chunking so you can actually understand the benefits and why we basically built Comet entirely around this whole chunking process itself.
Okay. So when we looked out in the market at the existing software products on the market for sort of backup vendors, there's a few things in common. And one thing that they have is a bit of a pedigree. You know, the same players have been in the market for a while. And it's the same technologies, the fundamental storage technology has been in use for a while. And basically the world has moved on, and this leads to a couple interesting points. So I'm going to quickly recap the traditional storage format used by most other backup products on the market, which is you've got your full file. The first time you run the backup, it has to upload the full file. The next time you run the backup, it downloads some kind of index, figures out what's changed, runs some diff process, and then upload the diff. And then it repeats that for every following day. You run into some problems. You know, it's quite a good model in many ways. It's good because you never have to upload too much data. You are always, it's a continuous process. You can just keep doing it as long as you like until you run into some issues. For instance, restoring. Restoring is a bit of the elephant in the room with this kind of model, because restoring is, you know, you're under some time pressure. The customer wants their database back. They want their files or their Exchange server. They want it back right now. And with this data model, in order to restore data, you have to download the base image and then apply the diff back into it. And then you have to download the next diff and apply that back into it. And then download the next diff and apply that back into it. And it's actually a worst case scenario. Restoring, the most important operation that you do, is a worst case scenario for this model, because you have to download so much extra unused data. You know, what if there's increments all replacing the same thing? It's also dangerous. You know, if you have one file lost or corrupted, then the entire, you know, the chain of them is broken. And so we saw several approaches in the market to avoid these issues. So a common one, you might know it from RSA version 5, and I think it's back in RSA version 7, is periodic re-upload. So every 30 days or 100 days, you would just re-upload the full file, which is good. It means you've got a different, you know, a faster restore track. It does have problems, of course, slow. You require extra storage to maintain the same amount of retention, because say you've got a 30-day periodic re-upload policy and a 60-day retention policy, then you're storing 2 base images, at least 2, maybe 3 base images, when you don't actually, you know, you shouldn't need to do that. And another workaround that people have used is merging increments. So RSA version 6 called this delta merge, and Vembu calls it a synthetic full image, where basically you take the first diff and the server merges that first increment into the full upload itself. And this is fine. However, it's not compatible with encryption, because you expect some amount of data privacy for your users, or your users have a reasonable expectation of privacy. each increment really should be encrypted, and the full file should be encrypted on the backup server, and you can't apply an encrypted diff to an encrypted file. That's just not how the technology works without decrypting it first. And so RSA version 6 has a bit of a bugbear where it does actually require you to decrypt, or the server needs to know the customer's password in order to apply a delta merge. And as well as this, there's the chance that maybe the server breaks halfway through. Server requires extra disk CPU usage to actually apply the diff, and basically it's just a hassle. These workarounds take you one step forward and two steps back. This whole traditional model is really just flawed, and so Comet doesn't use it. Comet, every time you run a backup with Comet, it looks at the file and splits it into chunks. And for each chunk, it can say, oh, well, this chunk already exists on the server, I don't need to upload it. Or this chunk is new, I need to upload it. And so we have all the chunks get uploaded. And then we can just say, oh, well, on this day, my Exchange database consisted of chunks. And on this day, my Exchange database consisted of this chunks. And that means something very important. It's equally fast to restore today's version as it is to restore the very first version. We don't have any edge cases with how retention works. If I want to get rid of, an old copy or today's copy, I can just remove the chunks that were in use. We never need a full re-upload of the data. You can run incremental backups forever with this model. The chunks are deduplicated at the chunk level. If a server already has this particular part of a file, then it never needs to be re-uploaded. So we have deduplication client side. It's cloud compatible. So one of the big problems with delta merge and synthetic fill, like we talked about in the last slide, is that the server would have to apply the complicated diff operation. You can't do that if you're storing data on a dumb storage device like an FTP server or SFTP, Amazon S3. Those things give you storage, but they do not give you compute, so you can't merge increments on that kind of storage infrastructure. And I think, yeah, that's a really brief overview. So this sort of technology, this is our fundamental difference. This is why Comet works really fast, because it's actually really fast to figure out where the chunks are in a file. It's efficient to restore because we don't have a lot of overhead in terms of diff processing. Yeah, and incremental forever with no full re-uploads. Every chunk is individually compressed and encrypted before upload. So we are cloud compatible with encryption and incremental forever, which I think is something that you couldn't say about a lot of other backup products on the market.
Okay, thanks, mate. So it's also quite secure, isn't it, using this chunking method as opposed to the other methods out there?
Absolutely, because with delta merge, the backup server would be required to know the customer's password, and so that's definitely a privacy violation.
Okay, thanks for that. So that was just a quick walkthrough of obviously the server roles in Comet and also chunking. We've got further details on these a bit more in depth on the Comet website, but if you do have any further questions, we can certainly look to address those. So now let's just move over to the Comet itself and have a bit of a walkthrough of it there. So should be able to see my screen now. So what we're going to do is just walk through the server and talk about some of the components during the setup process. I'm not going to do this as just how to set up your Comet server. We've got plenty of videos on our YouTube channel on how to do that, and it takes less than 10 minutes. But I thought I'd just walk through and just talk about some of the main big points we've got here. So first of all is the serials. With Comet itself, one thing to remember is we don't charge for serials. You can spin up as many Comet servers as you like, have as many replication and storage servers. All of that's completely free. For us, it was one of the fundamental decisions when we were making Comet is we didn't see any point of why we should be charging you for replication, because for us to charge you for it, it seems really unfair and a bit cheeky because, replication, it protects you and your customers' data better. So why should we be charging for that? I mean, being charged for best practices, it doesn't seem great. Next, we've obviously got the server branding, so you can fully brand the Comet server interface itself. And now is the new functionality that we've added in quite recently last week, and it's email reporting in Comet to be able to send out to customers. So you can obviously choose the display name and where it's sent by. And then we've got a couple of options here. So you can obviously have it permanently disabled for your Comet server. You can send via MX, or you can also just go through the traditional SMTP for sending out your email reporting. This is the one place you need to configure this in Comet to get it up and running. It's simple, no hassle, it's fairly straightforward. Next, we've obviously got the part where you can configure where you can see the Comet server interface from. Now, we've also got the ability here for HTTPS, and we've integrated with Let's Encrypt. Mason, can I quickly have a little discussion about Let's Encrypt integration?
Sure. So if you haven't heard about Let's Encrypt, it's a new project by Mozilla, and basically what it is it's free SSL certificates for everyone, which would be amazing on its own. It's got one more benefit, which is that it's fully automated, and you can get a SSL certificate automatically, which means we can renew it automatically. You never have to worry. Well, it's great that you don't have to worry about paying for SSL certificates ever again. It's also great that you don't have to worry about renewing them, and we constantly have issues with, in the past, people have forgotten to renew their SSL certificate, and they don't notice until a customer complains, and that's just really a bad look. So having an SSL certificate that is free and automatically renewing is basically a game changer.
Cool, thanks for that. So free SSL, I mean, you can't really argue with that. Next, we're setting up admin accounts, authentication role. Now, requesting storage vaults. Now, this is an option that we have in here that you can rebrand, the storage destinations that you want. So when you've installed client on the customer's machine and they request, where do I want to back up my files to, you can have your own branded destination. So it's quite nice to have, that brand continuity that, you're not just backing up to some generic device for them. They can see that their data is going back to, Josh's storage vault. And then we've got obviously options for replication roles, the storage roles. So now let's have a bit of a talk about storage locations. So recently we've added in the ability to basically push from the server to other storage cloud providers. So for example, you can go direct to Amazon, we've got Google Cloud, and all these others here. One of the cool things that we've implemented as well is something that's in really its first phase, and that's spanning. So I'm just going to jump over to the slides and just explain spanning a little bit more. So with spanning, in terms of storage, so you might have little bits of storage across various platforms. So you might have a server that's got 10 terabytes, a bit of cloud storage that's got 1 terabyte, and a NAS that's got 2 terabytes as well. Now, traditionally, these would be all completely separate storage destinations that you'd basically choose your data to go. Some would go there, some would go there, some would go there. With spanning in Comet, what this gives you the option of is it allows Comet to treat all of those storage destinations as one big destination. So instead of having to select your different servers of what order they're going to, it just treats it as one big storage chunk that they can all back up to. So it's a nice way of pooling all of your data together. Now with spanning, this is sort of the first iteration of this functionality. I mean, one of the things we've discussed internally here is we're going to be giving the option as well in an upcoming release that you're going to be able to do things like prioritize which of these destinations you want to fill up first. So you can say, oh, I want to fill up my server first, then I want the NAS to go next, and then I want my cloud storage as reserving. But spanning's a nice way that if you've got little bits of storage and you just want to get them all pulled together to utilize them in a nice simple way that Comet will basically evenly fill up all of these storage platforms at the same time. This is how we can do it. I don't think I've left anything out from that, Mason, have I?
You covered it quite well.
Cool. So that's spanning, and then you can also do nested spanning. Do you want to give a quick introduction to nested spanning?
Sure. So the fact that each one of these destinations is just another destination type, it's just sort of a natural consequence of the fact. I can set up. I can have my basic. Say I'm backing up to my 2 local hard drives. So I've got 2 partitions, and then in the future, if I want to expand that, I'm running out of space on my local partitions. I need to expand it into some additional storage, I can just add that on the fly. And whether that's a cloud storage destination or if it's an extra physical server or extra drive storage that I've added in. And in fact, one neat point that I'm just going to jump in here and say is that you can modify these settings and restart the Comet server. In fact, you could even reboot the Comet server, and customer backups will actually continue to run seamlessly. They will just retry until the server comes back online. So you can modify these settings, add additional storage on the fly, even during a customer backup.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Mason. So let's press on, because I am very mindful of time. And then we've got the options of replication. So another thing, Mason, here, do you want to give a quick discussion about replication? And, well, first of all, I have to point out once again, replication is free. Have as much replication as you like, but, what makes Comet's replication a bit better?
Gotcha. Okay, so replication, we've got a few main benefits. First of all, it's multi-threaded from day one, so the replication actually performs really well. It's really reliable because our storage system is not complex, it's just chunks on disk. And so, does a chunk exist? Oh no, we need to copy it to the other server. So it's very simple. It doesn't break. It's reliable in that sense. It's also end-to-end. You can replicate to as many different destinations as you want, and of course it's multi-threaded, so that works quite well. The other thing about it, and this may be a lesser known benefit of our replication system, is that it's instant failover. When you replicate data to another storage role, those chunks are immediately available on that other storage role. And so failing over your Comet server is as simple as switching a DNS record, because the other server is already ready to go.
Awesome, thanks for that. So that's replication. Let's continue stepping through. I am mindful of the time. I would say this is only supposed to be half an hour. I could probably talk all afternoon, but nobody's got that time. Software branding, so obviously you've got the ability to fully rebrand the clients that you're building directly here. You can also add in things like your own EULA, and custom, your help URLs that, if for some reason a client is looking in the client itself on the desktop and going, where can I find help? You can point to your own dedicated help page on a website that you might own or something like that. And that's it for setting up Comet, and then once it launches, we've obviously got the server interface. So let's just quickly step through this. So you've got the ability here to obviously see users and see, who's live connected. And from that, if they're live connected, it means that you can do things like get them to trigger a backup automatically. And by being automatically, I mean that it can happen instantly. So if you press run backup, it'll hit run backup now. We've also got things like you're able to enter the email address here for being able to send backup reports, being able to send and receive them. And then you've got your options here in terms of whether you want to restrict some customers to certain storage vaults and things like that. One of the other things that we've added in it was the client bulletin. So the bulletin functionality that we added in Comet was a way that you can very quickly push out a message to everybody in your environment that's using Comet that you've got an email address for. So the bulletin message, it might be used in a situation, you've got an emergency situation, or you've got a mass notification that you want to send out to everybody. It's just a handy way of, a nice way to get in touch with everybody, as opposed to perhaps, going through the process of mail merging or something like that. Then we've got things obviously like client news, as we discussed, that you can put on news or updates for the customer itself that shows up in the news section here. So I believe I've got this connected up, so let's just type in something here. And you can see it updates instantly because of the live connection. So if you're wanting to have personal messages of the day, or just have even the contact details here in the client of how the customer can get in touch with you, it's just a nice little thing that we've added in here. Now, while we're looking at the client, let's just quickly talk about the storage options that we've added in recently to the client itself. So if we're looking to back up something now, we have the option of adding in direct cloud storage locations as well. So whether you want to have this client be going directly to Amazon or Google Cloud or something like that, you can configure this now also for the client. Mason, do you want to have a quick discussion about the difference between having this go direct from the client and then also, or I suppose the other way of having it going from the Comet server itself?
Sure. The first thing I'd like to point out is that I know a lot of MSPs, their value add is the storage. So I just want to say this absolutely can be disabled by policy on a per user basis if you want to prevent users from having direct cloud access. So by default, the top item in this list, here it's called Comet Backup for you guys, it would actually be rebrandable. And so that means when this client does a backup, the pool of chunks that it's going to be working with, we call that a storage vault. And so the storage vault that it's going to be working with is an account on the storage role server. And so that's sort of the normal process. It goes from the client to the Comet server storage role server. And then the storage role itself might store those chunks on its local disk, or it might forward them to the cloud if it's out of space, or if you've got a purely virtual server. But it is possible also for the client to store things on the cloud directly. We, from the client's point of view, it's easy to see the cloud in several different ways. Some see it as a competitor, some see it as a tool. But the customers, the customer, they might have a book, or they might have, HP Stream, or one of those laptops with only 20 gigs of space, and they don't have much local storage. And when they do a local copy, they don't think about a local copy to a hard drive. They think about a local copy to their Dropbox, or a local copy to, Microsoft OneDrive. And so, from the client's point of view, having all these cloud storage options is really just it's the USB flash drive of 2017. So having these options available is just flexibility. You don't have to have them there. This is all you can have the customer always back up to your server. But it's just a testament to the flexible model of chunking that you can store the chunks anywhere. And in fact, you can even do spanning on the client side as well. So maybe the client's got they're running out of disk space locally and they want to span it to a USB flash drive or something, and it's all the same infrastructure because it is all just chunks on disk. Back to you.
Thanks for that. USB of 2017. That's awesome. Okay, so that's pretty much the storage options here. I can see that we've got a lot of questions in the Q&A, so I don't think there's anything further to discuss here on the client itself that's new. Other than, it's very simple for this to be configured in terms of backing up, also restoring. We're adding in further details that you can view your storage vaults, add them directly here from the client. We've also got another functionality here that it's the import functionality, and that is if you're looking at moving to Comet, if you install the Comet client itself on a computer that has a couple of other backup products itself. If you run this here, what it will do is it'll look for if there are another supported backup product already exists on the system, and it'll pull through all of the details into the Comet clients. It'll pull through, all the schedules, what files and folders been backed up, and that type of thing. So it makes migration nice and easy that you don't have to go through clients and reset them all up again. So let's get to some of the questions here, Mason. I'm going to be chucking some of these to you as well. So let's get into them. The first one I've got here is how large are the chunks?
Okay, so it's an interesting question. The chunks vary in size. We have a target size for a chunk of roughly half a meg to a meg. And that's sort of the minimum size at which the deduplication benefits will kick in. But the chunks are actually variable size, and they need to be variable size so that we can do things like data-dependent resynchronization. So say you've got a 100 gig SQL dump. That's MySQL using MySQL dump. And then someone writes an extra record right at the very start of the file. And if we were just looking at the first meg, second meg, third meg, by the time you're out the door, everything's just slightly offset and all your blocks look different. So we don't do that. It's data dependent. We have a real way of resynchronizing where we were up to and sort of getting those blocks back on consistent regardless of the data. And so the chunks are variable size, but roughly a megabyte, and that's when the benefits of deduplication will kick in for anything that's consistent larger than a megabyte.
Okay. Next one. How does chunking handle a file that's regularly recreated?
So in the sense that if a file is deleted and then recreated, say it's identical, if it was recreated identical, then when Comet tries to back it up, it will find the same chunks again, and it will say, oh, these chunks already exist on the storage vault, or they already exist on my flash drive, or whatever, and therefore to back up this particular data again, which actually has a whole lot of really neat benefits. So yeah, you can delete a file, do a backup, add the file, identical file back in, and do a backup, and take 0 time because all the chunks are already there. There's some really neat things you can do, like the fact that it's just transformative. We can do things like, oh, rename a file. We don't have to do any kind of special rename detection because as soon as the backup runs, just find the same chunks in the file, and so renaming is instant, works perfectly reliably. You can do things like copy a file, duplicate a file, doesn't take up any extra space for you, this storage, because the chunks already exist. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Next question here. Are we interested in opening our own backup company? Good question. No. We build software and we provide it to you guys that you guys can go out there and get customers out in the wild. That's your place. Our place is to build the software for you guys to do that. We're not interested at all in owning our own backup company or competing with you guys because I don't know, it seems a bit crazy. It's not something we really want to do. What's the next question here? Can you tell us more about distribution? Yes, we do have distribution options for various regions. If you are interested in distribution, please feel free to get in touch with me. That's something we can talk about further. Another question here about is there a way that we can periodically re-verify the integrity of chunks, or do they need to be re-verified, Mason? Do you want to have a bit of discussion about that?
So re-verification, it's an interesting point. I'm personally of the opinion it's really a file system responsibility, but let me rephrase that. With traditional backup, the reason for re-verification is twofold. One is to protect against, random hard drive randomly corrupted my file, or I don't have ECC RAM and the files just randomly get corrupted, and that's a 1 in a million kind of chance event. The other, more important reason for periodic re-verification is because you're doing something like delta merge synthetic fulls, and something's gone wrong with a calculation, or a diff merge has been interrupted. With Comet, every chunk is named after its Blake 2 hash or its SHA-256 hash, and so re-verification for us is so easy and it's so fast. We can do it. Not currently available in Comet 17.3. We have had a number of requests for this feature, and we will add it, but basically you shouldn't need it because the system doesn't mess with chunks after they've been touched. Chunks are hashed and verified when you upload them and when you download them. So unless you're expecting your hard drive to randomly flip bits or your RAM to randomly flip bits, then you shouldn't need this feature. Yeah, back to you.
Cool, thanks. It looks like actually the question we're talking about regularly recreated was actually a two-part question, so I'll read you the further part of it. For instance, if I had a disk image or SQL dump that was saved daily, and let's assume the process to create these files make sure to save the file with the same name each time, how does chunking handle that? Couldn't the data in the chunks change every day?
Okay, well, like I said before, the file name doesn't matter. The location of the data doesn't matter because even renaming a file, we will just find the same chunks in it, and we do have a special resynchronization within the file so that we can sort of find out the same chunks in the same file, even if the file has changed size or if you've completely restructured the file, you've put it end to end, and we will find the same content in it because of just how resynchronization in file works.
Okay, great. I am mindful that we're a little bit over time now, so I'll look to quickly, sum up a couple more further things here. In terms of, updates and how regular, we're pushing these out to Comet, you've got two options. You've got basically the stable branch, which is, our most recent, most stable version of Comet that you can move to. It's probably the least infrequently updated upgrade path. And the second, we've got another one, which is what we call Voyager, which is essentially a pre-release update that has, new features and, functions as we build them. So if you want to get, hold of, a new feature or something that you've seen that we've done, and you don't wait for it to come through to the stable upgrade path, you can go ahead and upgrade Voyager. So that's entirely up to you, which upgrade path you want to. Some people like to, be on the very latest version as it comes out. Other people want to be on the, the stable version that would be, several weeks to a month behind. It's entirely up to you of how you want to do that. All I can say is we're pretty quick in terms of building out the functionality. We're keeping developing Comet, and it's something that's it's going to be moving forwards. And to us to go, oh, we're only going to update Comet, twice a year. We think that's sort of letting everybody down, and we need to be a bit quicker than that because the industry and the technology these days are changing fast, and we're certainly moving with that. We've got quite a few other questions here in the Q&A. So the people that have submitted them, they haven't been able to get back to. I'll follow up with you personally after this and just go through those with you. Just a reminder that if you haven't tried Comet, we've got a free 30-day trial. If you need more time, you've got some other circumstances you want to talk about, please do feel free to get in touch with me. In terms of where you can find news about what we're doing with Comet and what's happening, we've got two places now. We've got the Comet blog, which is essentially going to be discussions with actually us and the team and talking about why we're doing it, but also the fact that we're going to start to be doing a lot of collaboration with other people that can bring a lot of benefit to MSPs and your business yourself. Got a lot of people that we're going to be interviewing. They've got some cool discussions and thoughts to share with you that can hopefully help you further. So with that, I think we're going to end that here. I have to thank everybody for coming. It's been great to see so many people here that are also outside of the US. Even though we build this as a US webinar based on the time zone, it's awesome to see the amount of people here, the EU as well, which we will be doing another webinar for you guys sometime soon. So if you've got any further questions or anything like that for us, please do feel free to email me. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining in, mate. All right. Cheers, everybody. Thanks.